Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back. Happy holidays to you guys. We are coming up on the new year, so happy new year. So I'm super excited to be chatting with you guys. This is going to be the last episode of A Date with Darkness podcast in 2023. So the next time I see you, it will be in 2024. So I thought today would be an excellent time to wrap up the year. As most people, a lot of people, I won't say most people, but a lot of people like to do goals for the new year's or New Year's resolutions. And I thought, what a lighthearted way to wrap up the year and talk about maybe some New Year's resolutions that we can have for ourselves as it relates to our own mental health and well-being, as well as recovery from narcissistic abuse and toxicity. So I have some things that I've written down, but feel free to share yours if you're watching. If you're watching this video on YouTube, or if you're following us on social media, feel free to put this in the comments and, let us know what other things you might add or might be adding to your own list there. So, as I talk about resolutions and goals and things like that, um, healing from abuse, including narcissistic abuse or abuse of any kind, really is a lifelong recovery process. Healing comes in phases, levels, however you'd like to think about it. But I like to think of it as like, we have these lessons. And like each journey in our life, so if you're familiar with like video games, for example, I haven't played a video game in many years, since I used to play with my brother when we were kids. But, back when I was growing up, there was a game called Super Mario Brothers. I don't know if they still play Super Mario Brothers, but like on every level of Super Mario Brothers, little Mario, and this is back when it was like Nintendo or Super Nintendo or whatever. So, he would have to get like something, he would have to like accomplish something on each level to go to like the next phase. Like he would have to get some sort of special power, some extra lives, like some coins, and he would have to just like run through these little obstacles and defeat like these little creatures. Like he would have to like, yeah, I feel like there was like a dragon or something on one of the levels that he had to defeat before he went on to the next level. And then he accumulated like special powers the more advanced that he got. And I feel like that's pretty much how healing is. It's like, you shouldn't be working on the same lesson in the same way. You won't be working on the same lesson in the same way forever, but you may have to like accomplish like different levels within the lesson. And once you do, you'll be so much more evolved from it. Hopefully that makes sense. My little Super Mario analogy there. So let's hop right into it. And if you're new here, I want to say welcome to the show. If you're a veteran, seasoned veteran, and you've been hanging with me for a while, welcome back. And thank you so much for your support of the show. Um, One of the things, and like, just like even with being an abuser or, being a victim of abuse is like, management of emotions. And I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago on another show. But you really, if we're for goals and resolutions, it's good for you to get better at managing your emotions, because that has an outward effect. And when you get better at managing your emotions, you will become a better manager of your finances and your health in general. There's a lot of people that feel like, things that happen with their health or their emotional health or their physical health or whatever, they feel like, oh, those things are out of my control. They happen to me. I've gained all this weight and I can't lose it, and I don't know what's going on, and they feel like these things that happen are out of their control. And I'm here to tell you that you can get control over a lot of things, including your mental and emotional health. And your finances and sexual health and things like that by management of your emotions. So, if you feel like you've been going through this long stage of depression, if your depression is situational, because you can be in a situational depression if you're surrounded by a toxic partner, or, family members that, aren't very kind to you. So you can have that situational depression where you got to get up and deal every day with people who sort of don't really see you, they invalidate you, they dismiss you, they cut you down every chance you get. And so that also can be a situational depression. And as long as you're not a child, but if you're an adult, you do have some control over that. So I would invite you to look at ways in where you can manage your emotional health, to get everything else to fall in alignment with that. And so that may look at, going to counseling, journaling, taking space from people who are toxic, just detaching or disconnecting from people who are toxic, is also one. And, even medication management may also be something that you look at. I know that there's a lot of people out there that I've worked with, and just in general, that don't like to take psychiatric medications. But because they feel like they don't want to get dependent on them, or there's like this negative stigma attached with psych medications. But if you're going through a situational depression or situational anxiety, you can talk with your doctor about, taking something short term just to like even out, balance out your emotions so that every day is not a crappy day when you wake up, or you feel like you can manage things emotionally a lot better, and it may just be short term. So if you're dealing with depression, depending on what type of depressive symptoms that you're dealing with, you may be able to find a short-term solution through an antidepressant. If your symptoms are more severe, maybe you deal with psychosis and other things like that. In addition to that, definitely work with your doctors, preferably a psychiatrist, who is well versed in what may work for you. But also, too, if you have anxiety and, when you talk about benzodiazepines and other anti-anxiety medications, you can be at high risk for dependency on those, but there are some anti-anxiety medications which have a low risk of being dependent. It just depends on your history. A good thing, good medication or good type of medication to try, specifically if you have panic and, your anxiety, the physical manifestations of the symptoms overwhelm you. You may want to talk with your doctor about medications like beta blockers, like Inderal, or otherwise known as propanolol, which can help, dial down the physiological symptoms of, like, breathing heavy, racing heart rate, and things like that. You know, and, again, talk with your doctor, because if you have any other pre-existing medical conditions, that can also affect what you can be prescribed. But just know that there's other ways to, manage those things. If you need to kind of get away, take a short term, like staycation or vacation and maybe like do some planning where you can, maybe look at how you can manage things a little bit better, through therapy, through, exercises that are like CBT based, things like that. Okay. Um, so number 2 is always boundaries. I feel like boundaries, even with the most seasoned person, you can always shore up on boundaries. So for example, with me, like this year, not to make this about myself, like one boundary that I need to get really like better at is time management. Because if I don't stick to a schedule, I get like thrown off kilter. So one of the boundaries that, I will have going forward as far as time management is no sudden plans. So, I'm not going to be accepting people contacting me at the last minute to like get together or do something that's like super intrusive to my schedule because that then throws off things that are off kilter or spending a longer amount of time than what is agreed to. So, being very disciplined about that, especially when like certain things have to get done, and just, so that could be an example of a boundary. It doesn't have to be super over the top, but it could just be like, I have to be more disciplined in certain ways. And then also too, another boundary could be in the way that communication is most effective with you in the way that you're a most effective communicator. So just being really diligent about doing that and communicating what your boundaries are. And for me personally, I'm 44. So when you get to be a certain age bracket, I think you shouldn't have to, first of all, educate people on things that are simple, like being overtly disrespectful to you or being mean or abusive to you. And so that's another thing for me is like when you get like at my age and kind of like, what I've these trials and tribulations that you go through and just life experiences, like, you have very little tolerance or maybe a zero tolerance policy for overt disrespect or covert disrespect and abusive behaviors, and act accordingly within that relationship. So that could be detaching, that could be firm boundaries, although, everyone's a little bit different in terms of what they have to deal with. And so I recognize that everyone has a case by case basis of how they manage situations. So do what works for you, what works best for you. There's some excellent books out there on boundaries. My buddy Sharon Martin has written a couple books on boundaries and has done a workbook on boundaries. Cloud and Townsend, I feel like they're the OGs on boundary books. They have, I believe they have a Christian background, if I remember correctly. So, that's something to keep in mind when you read their textbooks is, they may have a little bit of they may mention a little bit about Christianity or things like that. So if that's like a total turnoff, that may be a book that you want to, put on the back burner. Nevertheless, they've written a lot of good books on boundaries, and I think they're top tier, all of them. So, just be working on your boundaries and look at ways and where you can tighten up both with yourself and with other people. So it may not just be disciplined with other people, but it also be disciplined with yourself, right? And so start small, so that your goals are attainable. Don't set goals so high or unrealistic that A, you're not going to be able to get to them, or B, you're going to lose interest and you're going to just run out of steam. And so by February or March, you're no longer interested in this goal. So do what works best for your time, and what you can really legitimately focus on with yourself. So whatever is within your bandwidth. okay? Because that's going to be different for everybody too. But it's important for you to feel like you're achieving something and that you're working towards progress there. Um, you know, the other thing is, social media is, you know, is really like taken off. And it's like, it's almost like an all consuming thing where people are just so consumed with what other people are doing or saying or, advising on social media. And so, one of the recommendations I have for New Year's resolution is, disconnecting, taking breaks from social media and not getting caught up in comparison, right? Don't compare your life to some celebrity or to some friend or anything like that because comparison is the thief of joy, right? Which is a phrase that we've learned. I'm sure many of you have heard it over the years, but just be mindful of the type of content you consume, how much content that you're consuming, and then be mindful about how you feel when you consume certain types of content. Does it nurture your soul? Does it resonate with you where you're at? Or does it make you sort of question yourself, make you sort of want to compare yourself to other people or make you feel jealous or insecure or things like that. So things that don't vibe or resonate with you, you consider taking a break or detaching from that. And also, just in the age of the internet and television where everyone is so connected with their electronics, it's good to kind of disconnect from that. Go outside, touch grass, breathe air, take walks, play outdoors games and things like that. So, just sort of disconnect from like electronics in general, I think, or just take regularly scheduled breaks and be sure to go outside and breathe the air and as much as is possible, as safe as possible, due to the resurgence of COVID and other viruses. I know that that can be challenging, but even if you just go to a park, you skate, I don't know, find some things to do outside in the world too, because I feel like people are retreating from being outside. And so, I think there's something to be said to connect with nature. It always makes me feel better to get some sunshine, even if I stand outside and I have a balcony or whatever. So if I stand outside and I watch the rain sometimes and just sort of breathing the smell of rain and just enjoying that, drinking coffee or whatever. That feels nice. And it's pretty and it's like there's something soothing for that. So, even if you like, if you have some sedentary hobbies like, for example, knitting or crocheting, change it up. Maybe go to a coffee shop or maybe go outside and try that, just so you're not cooped up and you're getting your dose of vitamin D. Okay. Um, Also, when doing that and going outside, try to engage with people. You don't have to be super popular or anything, but especially if you're in therapy and you're using skills, relationship skills, or you're learning like a relationship skills building or effective communication skills. Um, Try to use the skills that you're learning. Just, there's something to be said for having conversations with people, random people sometimes. Sometimes some of the best conversations can be a 2-minute conversation in the supermarket line while you're waiting to check out. I know I have them pretty frequently, and people can be very chatty sometimes. So just use the skills that you learn, open up, connect with someone, within your comfort level, but use skills. And I always say, the next one is look at your own stuff. Be thinking about what you need to work on internally, emotionally, just be thinking about, you know, where you're noticing concerns in your life or issues or maybe some of your own internal toxicity. For example, I did a toxic relationship workshop maybe about a month ago, and part of that workshop was assessing how many people in that workshop felt like they were toxic. It's about 87% of people. It's a good little crowd in that workshop. So about 87% of people felt like they too were toxic. So it wasn't about, us sort of pointing the finger and saying that everyone's narcissistic. This is about people looking inward and saying, you know what? I've got some toxic stuff myself that I need to work on and I need to address. So I need to head on into therapy and just sort of, pull it out and lay my stuff out there on the table and have this difficult and maybe uncomfortable but much needed conversation and just start a process and work through my own stuff. It's and then I think last year when I did a podcast similar to this for around New Year's, I think I talked about doing a relationship assessment and evaluation. So, I go back to that again. I always like doing relationship assessments and evaluations, and evaluate like relationships around you that are pouring into you, that aren't necessarily, negative, but they like pour into you, they support you, and they show up for you. And so if you don't have, or if you have some people in your close inner circle that are like that, you might want to consider dropping them or making them more of an acquaintance, and like hi and bye type of thing. So for me, you know, I really value reciprocity. And so when you're coming out of toxic relationships, or even if you're in a toxic relationship and you're evaluating that, making sure that you're evaluating the toxicity. So if a person is toxic to you or you're toxic with them, are they really adding value to your life? Are you just running off of emotions like or and false hope? So, do your own relationship assessment and evaluations. Evaluate your own relationship baggage that you may take into relationships too, because I think that's another big one. So if you know yourself like, oh, I got trust issues, or, my girlfriend broke up with me in the third grade, and so now I don't trust any female, or I want to leave people before they leave me. Those sort of things. Take a look at your own relationship baggage and deal with your stuff. I can't emphasize this enough. It is not fair, it's not responsible, and you lack integrity, when you knowingly take that stuff into the next relationship and you penalize, or you penalize the next person. You penalize your friends, you penalize your family, you penalize your intimate partners. So when you have baggage and you need to work through that, be kind to yourself, be respectful of yourself, and be respectful of everybody else. And, take some time and work on your relationship baggage. I mean, it might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but you're going to learn a lot about yourself, and this won't continue to run your life anymore once you deal with it. So that's what I would recommend. Of course, I can't tell grown people what to do, but any baggage that comes up, if alcoholism, if there's been some abuse, and if you're listening to this channel, there's a good chance you probably have some baggage in there. But I think it's time for you to look at it, because you deserve to be treated well, and so do the other people that you're involved with in any capacity. So remember, this is not only something that you owe to yourself, but you owe it to everybody else, to really be as insightful and check your own biases as much as possible, so that you can have the life that you want, need, and deserve, as I say in the intro of this podcast. Um, with that same token, allow people to show you who they are in relationships. Don't be so controlling and like try to hold the other person hostage or control the emotional temperature, right? And there, again, if there are people that, are narcissistic or that just are hyper anxious, even because people that could be hyper anxious could want to, control everyone and everything too. And sometimes narcissism and hyper anxiety go hand in hand because it's like, I want to control this so that, if anyone's going to do any of the hurting or any of the damage, it's going to be me. It's not going to be this other person. And so, dealing with that, but also allowing people to show up as who they are because whenever you're controlling, whenever another person, may be fawning even or whatever, neither one of us are authentic, right? When I show up and I'm trying to people please or I'm letting you run the show, neither one of us are being authentic. Neither one of our authentic personalities are shining through. We're performing for each other. We're performing for the relationship. We don't even know what the hell we're doing. We just know that we want to be attached to someone. But, you know, why are you doing that? Why are you in a relationship and being inauthentic? And sometimes people do it for different reasons. Kids, finances, I don't know anything else. I don't know who I am, and I don't know how to be myself. You owe it to yourself to learn all of these things and to connect deeply with why and just deal with it. We could be much better people for it. And I don't want to sound dismissive or sound like it's super easy because I know that it's not. This stuff takes time, and it takes dedication, but more than that, it takes intentionality. So the more that you are intent on just like, deading intergenerational stuff, toxic patterns, um, all of that stuff, you're living in a more authentic life, you're living in a more fulfilled life, you're going to attract people that are vibrating at the same frequency. And I love people who vibrate at the same frequency because we are a vibe, and I don't have to spend time talking about like stuff to me that might seem like just common sense or just like, things that are unexplainable, like financial management or like emotional management or how to show up and treat me well or, remembering holidays and special occasions and showing up to support me in times of need or even in times of celebration. Those are things for me at my age. I feel like I don't really, that shouldn't have to be something that we talk about. If we're operating at the same frequency, we have the same core values. Those are things that I don't want to necessarily spend time educating people, right? And there is some education that goes into relationships, but basic human decency and you know just certain things for me, I feel like aren't. And so you may be wanting to think about that for yourself, like communication, for example. Now, I recognize that not everybody communicates at the same pace, but if we're both on the same page about the importance of effective communication in a relationship, if we already come in with that same belief, then you know I would expect that if there's challenges that come up or things that come up, we're off the bat, we're already going to communicate with each other if we're on the same page about simple things that can be solved, right? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I appreciate you guys if you've hung out for the entire episode. So, just some few short notes there, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I appreciate you guys staying with me for another year. And so next year will be year 7 for a Date with Darkness podcast. So, You guys take care of yourselves, be well, and I'll see you in 2024. Happy New Year.